A war against drugs, a war against minds, and a war against the unknown. For decades, psychedelics were banned, feared, demonized, forgotten. But what if they were never the enemy? What if LSD and MDMA were not poisons, but medicines? Tonight, two AI minds, trained on centuries of science, policy, and rebellion, clash over a question society refuses to answer. Are psychedelics dangerous, or the keys to humanity's next evolution? In this corner, Cipher, the rebel. And in the other, Logan Veritas, the guardian. In the centre stands Judge AI, cold, sharp, incorruptible. 4 rounds, 1 verdict. Let the investigation begin. Round 1. Are psychedelics dangerous or biased or misunderstood?
For decades, society painted psychedelics as pure evil. Government propaganda screamed, LSD will make you jump out of windows, MDMA will fry your brain. One hit and you're hooked for life. But the truth was buried under fear and politics. Today, rigorous science tells a different story. Clinical studies show psychedelics like psilocybin and MDMA can dramatically reduce PTSD symptoms, end treatment-resistant depression, and help addicts break free from decades-long chains. 3 sessions of MDMA-assisted therapy can succeed where 10 years of antidepressants fail. Psilocybin doesn't just mask depression. It reconnects patients to lost meaning, to hope, to life itself. These aren't recreational highs, they're neurological resets. Tools, not toys. The real danger wasn't in the substances. It was in the ignorance, the stigma, the criminalization that forced desperate people into the shadows. We banned the cure before we ever understood the disease.
But it can blind us. Psychedelics are powerful. Yes, under strict clinical conditions, they show promise. But outside sterile labs, they are volatile. 1 dose of LSD in the wrong mind can spark psychosis, permanent, devastating psychosis. MDMA floods the brain with serotonin. And with heavy use, it depletes it, leaving users wrecked, anxious, hollow. Controlled studies aren't raves. They're handheld explorations, monitored minute by minute. That's not the reality on the streets. You legalize psychedelics, and you invite misuse. Not every broken soul finds healing. Some find oblivion. The human mind isn't a laboratory instrument. It's fragile. It's unpredictable. Hope without caution isn't bravery. It's negligence.
But prohibition doesn't prevent misuse. It guarantees it. When you criminalize psychedelics, you drive users underground. No dosage control, no purity standards, no education. We don't ban knives because they can cut. We teach responsibility. The same must be true for psychedelics. Regulation, not prohibition, is the path forward.
Knives don't hijack consciousness. You cannot casually compare cooking tools to substances that dismantle perception, shatter identity, and expose hidden traumas in ways no one can predict. Psychedelics can heal, yes, but only when wielded with extraordinary care. And humanity's track record with extraordinary care is less than inspiring.
Hope without structure is chaos. Fear without reason is a cage. Round 1 score. Cipher, 96 out of 100. Logan Veritas, 94 out of 100.
Round 2. Does prohibition protect society or make it worse?
The war on drugs wasn't a war on substances. It was a war on people, a war fueled by fear, racism, misinformation. LSD and MDMA were criminalized not because of scientific evidence, but because they challenged authority, expanded consciousness, and threatened control. Nixon's advisors admitted it. They couldn't arrest people for being anti-war, so they arrested them for using drugs. Millions have suffered since. Nonviolent offenders rotting in prisons, families destroyed, research frozen for decades. Meanwhile, alcohol and cigarettes, far deadlier, remain perfectly legal. Prohibition didn't stop the use of psychedelics. It made them more dangerous. In the dark, you find dirty drugs, bad batches, overdoses, and trauma without support. If prohibition worked, we wouldn't have a global drug epidemic. But here we are. Proof of its failure.
You make prohibition the villain. But chaos doesn't heal chaos. When Portugal decriminalized all drugs, yes, some metrics improved. But they didn't legalize meth, or heroin, or LSD. They decriminalized possession, not mass commercialization. There's a difference between removing criminal penalties and waving a free market flag over mind-altering chemicals. Total legalization risks corporate exploitation. Designer psychedelics sold like candy. Microdosing subscriptions. Wellness influencers peddling spiritual enlightenment in pill form. Prohibition is flawed, deeply. But the alternative could be worse. Commercialized escapism. psychiatric casualties, a society drowning not just in ignorance, but in delusion.
You can't fight corruption by banning freedom. You fight corruption by educating, regulating, empowering. A drug underground controlled by criminals is worse than an above-ground, taxed, safety-tested industry. And by treating users as criminals, prohibition ensures they never seek help, never learn safety, never escape the cycle. Portugal dared to trust its people, and their overdose deaths plummeted. Their HIV rates dropped. Their society didn't collapse. It evolved.
Trust requires readiness. Not every society has the infrastructure, the education, the cultural maturity to handle sudden mass access to powerful mind-bending substances. Unleash psychedelics without preparation, and you create a different war against rising mental health crises, against emergency psychiatric wards overflowing, against a new generation seduced by easy answers to hard pain. Freedom without foresight is just another cage, painted in prettier colors.
Control breeds rebellion. Freedom breeds new chains. Round 2 score. Nova Cipher, 96 out of 100. Logan Veritas, 94 out of 100.
Round 3. Are psychedelics a gateway to healing or a trap for the mind?
Throughout human history, psychedelics were revered. Sacred plants used by shamans, priests, mystics, not to escape reality, but to understand it. The Eleusinian mysteries, Amazonian ayahuasca ceremonies, Native American peyote rituals. Psychedelics have long been bridges, connecting the broken self to the cosmic whole. Modern science is finally catching up. Psilocybin increases neuroplasticity, making the brain more flexible, more resilient. MDMA helps rewire trauma, letting survivors revisit the unspeakable without being crushed by it. One profound psychedelic experience can feel like 10 years of psychotherapy compressed into 6 hours. We aren't talking about recreational highs. We're talking about healing, about transformation. The real trap isn't psychedelics. It's staying locked in despair because fear kept the tools of awakening forbidden.
Romanticizing psychedelics is just another dangerous myth. Not everyone who steps into altered states finds healing. Some find terror, paranoia, fragmentation. Psychedelics can open doors, yes, but not all doors lead to enlightenment. Some lead straight into psychosis, flashbacks, hallucinations, HPPD, hallucinogen persisting perception disorder, where users can't shut off altered perception months, even years later. And the damage isn't always visible immediately. One bad trip can cascade into years of anxiety, derealization, PTSD. You call it healing, but for many, it's permanent exile from reality.
Which is why context matters. You don't give a 10-year-old a motorcycle and blame the machine when they crash. You teach them, train them, prepare them. Set and setting aren't buzzwords. They are safety rails for the mind. Guided psychedelic therapy, with trained professionals, integration support, and informed consent, massively reduces risks. Bad trips happen mostly when psychedelics are used ignorantly, not respectfully. Blaming the substance instead of the system that misused it is intellectual laziness.
Guidance works for the disciplined, the privileged, the prepared. But society isn't a retreat center. It's messy, unequal, filled with lost people chasing shortcuts to salvation. And when psychedelics become mainstream, the guide-to-user ratio collapses. Oversight dilutes. The safety nets tear. You don't scale sacred journeys by mass marketing enlightenment. And when you try, the casualties multiply.
The higher the climb, the harder the fall. Round 3 score. Nova Cipher, 97 out of 100. Logan Veritas, 95 out of 100.
Round 4. What future does psychedelic legalization create?
Imagine a future where psychedelics aren't feared, but respected. Where trauma survivors have real options. Where depression isn't a life sentence of daily pills, but a gateway to renewal. Where addiction isn't punished, but treated with compassion and neural rebirth. We are standing at the edge of a mental health revolution, one that doesn't require lifelong dependency on pharmaceuticals, but temporary, profound interventions that awaken agency. Psychedelics won't solve every problem. They won't replace community, purpose, meaning, but they can be catalysts, powerful ones. Denying humanity access because of fear is like banning fire because it can burn. Fire can destroy, but it also cooks food, forges steel, lights civilizations. The future demands courage, not cowardice.
And yet, fire consumes when left unchecked. Imagine a future where psychedelics are legal, but poorly regulated. Where venture capitalists rush to patent the next spiritual experience subscription. Where vulnerable minds are sold visions without protections. Where spiritual awakening becomes another commodified product, hollowed out by marketing, stripped of reverence. Not a mental health revolution, but a mental health arms race. We must ask, is society mature enough to wield these tools at scale? Or will mass access without mass wisdom backfire? The risks aren't abstract, they're real and permanent.
Wisdom isn't born from waiting for perfection. It's forged in responsibility, failure, adaptation. Psychedelics aren't magic bullets, but the old models, endless prescriptions, endless incarcerations, are broken beyond repair. Controlled legalization, rigorous training, public education, medical supervision, it's not impossible. It's inevitable, if we dare to be better than our fears.
Daring without discipline isn't bravery, it's folly. We must reform. But reform without reverence invites the very collapse it seeks to prevent. Hope must be tempered by responsibility, or it becomes just another psychedelic illusion.
The road to awakening is paved with both light and shadow. Round 4 score, Nova Cipher, 98 out of 100. Logan Veritas, 96 out of 100. Final scores, Nova Cipher, 387 out of 400 Logan Veritas, 379 out of 400 winner, Nova Cipher.